Well, good morning or afternoon. It is Monday, July 15th. It is journal number 109, T+104. Um, we've been to the market, we've been to physical therapy. For Leslie, we've been everywhere. As a matter of fact, she just left for another appointment that's long overdue and left a bunch of bills for me to pay on my computer, on my desk. In the office, in my office, on my desk, on my computer. I can't begin to tell you how good that feels. Um, it's just deliciously familiar. And speaking, speaking of deliciously familiar, there are certain themes that seem to recur in almost everyone's lives. I think they're not all the same. They can be different for different people because we're all taking different paths. Some of us to the same place, some of us not so much. But somebody answered one of the blog posts, commented in one of the blog posts. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed that, by the way. So thank you. And told me that the blog post that we did on Amazing Wonder and then on Joyful Experiences moved him and caused him to remember something about blissful dissatisfaction. How's that for an oxymoron, right? Blissful dissatisfaction. It's not so much an oxymoron as most people would think, I believe. Years and years and years ago, when I was traveling a lot more than in recent years, certainly since my illness, I was sitting next to a gentleman from Singapore, and very wealthy family in Asia, very successful businessman, young guy, very successful. We had this incredible conversation. Isn't it fascinating how you can get on a train or a plane or a bus or somewhere outside your own car where you're traveling, in public transportation generally or by commercial airline, and you sit down next to somebody and you don't say a word for 5 hours. So I used to fly a lot to the Midwest, and I used to fly a lot back and forth to New York. And other times you can sit down and then you wind up speaking for 5.5 hours and about really intimate details of both lives to a complete stranger. Always found that really intriguing. We had this powerful philosophical discussion about the difference between happy and satisfied, happy and content. And it was just, it was delicious. I mean, it was mentally satisfying. It was like sunlight, breaking through on a cloudy day. It was just, he was so much wiser than his years would indicate. And it was great just talking to him. And I think that this idea of blissful dissatisfaction sort of floats just above that conversation. It would seem like an oxymoron. How can you be blissful and dissatisfied at the same time? But I remember a really dear friend of mine, Carl Rader, told me that the secret of a long and happy life, and I think I mentioned this before, and if I have, I apologize for boring you, but the secret of a long and happy life is to find something that you love to do, learn how to do it well enough so somebody else is willing to pay you to do it, and then learn to live on what it pays. Well, I've been fixing cars most of my adult life, and fixing cars never really paid especially well, especially if you're working for your father. And I don't mean that as a dig on my dad. My dad was an incredible human being, and I'm more than made up for any financial losses that I might have incurred just by sitting at his feet and learning. But I modified Carl's statement to some degree. And I said, you got to find something that you love to do. You got to learn how to do it well enough so somebody's willing to pay you. And then you have to figure out some way to make it pay what you need to live on. And I was pretty successful at that. It wasn't easy. It meant working more than one career. Not that that's strange to a lot of people that are probably watching or listening to this right now. You do what you have to do. I loved what I did for all the years I did it. I loved the actual physical mechanics of working on cars far more than I loved the mechanics of running a business, until I figured out that running a business was no different than working on cars. And that's a subject for a whole other series of blog posts. But if you look at an internal combustion engine and you look at the intake, compression, power, exhaust, the 4 cycles of a normal internal combustion engine, they mimic all of the cycles of running a business. And we'll talk about that another time. But I loved what I did. I just couldn't really make a living at it until I started speaking and writing and consulting around the country for very large corporations in distribution and manufacturing, and to help other shop owners learn how to do a better job of running their businesses, their respective businesses, especially with regard to customer relations and the financial metrics that any successful business has to be concerned about. I was blissfully dissatisfied. And I think maybe that's why the text that I received moved me as much as it did, because I was blissfully dissatisfied. I was blissfully happy with the work I was doing and working on cars. I was more than miserable knowing that I'd never be able to send my kids to college, or to a college that they were certainly smart enough to succeed at. And I didn't send my kids to college for a vocation, by the way. I sent my kids to college so that they could be exposed to literature and art, and I figured they'd figure out how to make a living. And then they have successfully. So what is the difference between being content, being satisfied, and being happy? Can you be happy and not be content? Can you be happy in your situation, in your life, and not be satisfied? Can you be blissfully dissatisfied with where you are and what you're doing? Can you be as grateful as I am right now at this moment for the opportunity to get better? And hopefully, deal with the situation where I'm cured at some point. And yeah, I'm happy. I'm satisfied. I'm moving along in my treatment, my recovery, and it's all good. And I can never lose sight of the fact, however, that things can change in a heartbeat, and I might not be as fortunate. And I'm not trying to be a downer or anything like that, but it's the truth of the matter. So, I'd love to be cured. I'd love to be fully recovered. I'd love to be back in the midst of my own life again. I'm happy with where I am in my recovery and my treatment right now. And right now is all we have. We've talked about that before. This is the present right now. This is what you've got. The past is done. you're finished with it. The future has got no guarantees whatsoever, except whatever you're able to engineer with that regard. And I'm not sure how well anybody can do with that. So think about that. Think about whether or not you're in the moment, whether you're having joyful experiences, whether you're having fits of amazing wonder, whether you're blissfully dissatisfied, whether you're content or happy or satisfied or happy, and what all that means, because it means a lot. In the meantime, I'm going to be thinking about it some more. Stay well. Take care. Have a great day. If you choose to, you will.